Freaky Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Where are the funds? What's going on? Canadian politics, you know, the scandals and scams with this Trudeau NDP Liberal coalition government. It's been a disaster. We're going to try something a little bit different today. And we're going to pretty much go on the fly. Like, if anybody wants to let us know what they want to see or what they want to watch, we're going to be flipping around. I've got an extra computer here hooked into the system today, so maybe we'll be able to float around and see what people want to watch, because maybe we have some options. If nothing else, we'll be able to put the chat up a few times. That's one of my favorite things, is to say hello to everybody. And we're just going to get kicking off here with something from CPAC. This is POILIEVRE. And also, just to let you guys know, I'm stretching myself a little bit today. And if there are any screw-ups or whatever, let me know in a message right away, like for audio levels and all that kind of stuff, because it's hard to tell when you're monitoring this many. Well, it's not that it's so many things. It's just a couple more than I'm used to. Let me know in the comments if there's issues with anything like that. Let's
Stopper les crimes. C'est ça le gros bon sens, c'est ce dont nous avons besoin après 8 ans de Justin Trudeau et le bloc qui n'en vaut pas le coup. Hi everyone, happy International Women's Day, especially to my mother, my daughter, and my wife, my 3 bosses in this world. I want to thank the Board of Trade for the long-standing 18-month invitation that they have had for me to come here today. And I don't want you to feel bad about the time it took, because this is the first time I have spoken to either a Chamber of Commerce or a Board of Trade since I became leader of the Common Sense Conservatives 2 years ago. During that time, I've spoken at 110 shop floors and 5 union local facilities. And the reason why this is only my first Chamber or Board of Trade is nothing to do with my view on business. I love business. I love free enterprise. I love the people who risk their entire worth their entire family savings in order to start a business and build their dreams. Rather, the reason this is my first time speaking to a business association of this type is because my experience with the corporate lobbyists in Ottawa, the main groups there, have been that they have been utterly useless.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you. How are you today?
Common sense interests for the people.
Let's see what we can do.
The corporate lobbyists in Ottawa are focused on getting lunches with ministers at the Rideau Club, or showing off their latest ESG brochure, or expecting that politicians are going to do things for them without actually convincing the people on the ground of the benefit to them. My common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime is a bottom-up free enterprise agenda, not a top-down state capitalism agenda. It is not about politicians and CEOs working together for their own interests. It is about unleashing the power of free enterprise so that workers and entrepreneurs and consumers can exchange the voluntary purchase of goods for services, goods for dollars, of investment for interest, and of work for wages. It is about putting people back in charge of their lives. And my message to corporate Canada is that when I'm Prime Minister, if you want any of your policy agenda pushed forward, you're going to have to convince not just me, but the people of Canada that it is good for them. For too long, corporate leaders have thought that their role is simply to write a policy statement and expect it to be implemented. Meanwhile, it has been left to workers on the ground and First Nations in their communities to fight for the projects that have been good for them, projects that are ultimately blocked by government gatekeepers, and leaving those workers and those communities on the sidelines. And so when I'm Prime Minister, my obsession, my daily obsession, will be about what is
Hey,
good
Pierrette,
for
what's
the
up? How are
working
you?
class people of this country.
Good
And,
morning.
I'm going to go through my common sense plan now and talk about why this plan is not only popular, the one obviously very popular with the people. We've seen the results of we've obviously seen the public opinion data showing that people overwhelmingly support my common sense plan, but why this plan is necessary to turn our economy around. Let's start with the
I don't mean to be
state of
dense.
play in Canada.
I just can't tell.
After 8 years of Justin Trudeau and the NDP, everything costs more. Food prices have risen faster than at any time in 40 years. This is because of a carbon tax that has increased
well,
the cost
the
for
feedback
farmers
seems
who
to be
produce
that the
food,
audio is
the truckers
too
who ship
too
the
low.
food, the grocers who sell the food. A carbon
So,
tax
okay, well,
that is scheduled to quadruple
What if
over
I
the
turn
next
my
5.5
voice down?
years, and which will go up on April 1st. Now, the NDP in this province has agreed to implement that tax, where in other provinces the local government has said no, and therefore Trudeau has imposed it from above. Here, the NDP has enthusiastically embraced the goal of raising energy prices on working-class families and has committed to go ahead with the hike this coming April 1st, a 23% carbon tax hike that will make life more expensive for everyday Canadians who are already unable to eat. This is happening in the context of 2 million annual visits, 2 million annual visits to food banks, a massive 32% increase over 8 years ago. And there are now a third of charities in Canada that are actually turning people away from food banks because they do not have enough food for them. So now we have a new phenomenon in Canada. It's a Facebook network with 8,000 members
for the feedback. I'm
called the
asking for help.
Dumpster Diving Network.
Is that better though, or is it too loud?
This is a group of Canadians who share
this is
tips
good now.
on how you can eat out of a garbage can in Canada.
Yeah,
You only have to take a drive
Sorry
around
for the interruptions.
communities across
I'm
this
just
country
learning.
to see the tent cities that pop up. This
Is my voice too
existed
loud now?
in the downtown
I
east
turned it
side
down.
of Vancouver for some time. But the model of downtown east side has been spread right across the country. And, for example, on the other side of the nation, in Halifax, they have 30 homeless encampments. This is exactly the worst time to raise the cost of food. And that is why I am announcing today that I'm calling on NDP Premier David Eby and Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh to cancel the April 1st carbon tax hike, spike the hike, and axe the tax. This is a tax that, by the way, targets small businesses. One reason I chose this association to speak to is because you represent a lot of small businesses, entrepreneurial, bottom-up enterprises. BC actually has good associations for business. You guys represent the entrepreneurial sector, unlike some other corporate centers where they're focused on representing large
touch on that
protected corporations. You have entrepreneurial bottom-up
Hey,
businesses.
Wastelands, what's
We're
up?
getting hit exceptionally hard. There has been no rebate for the carbon tax for small businesses. In fact, in BC, there's no rebate for anyone. But small businesses are going to pay this tax without having any compensation. And of course, they often, Trudeau will say, pass it on to consumers. Well, in some cases, you can't, because you're up against foreign competitors who don't pay the carbon tax. In other words, this tax is forcing our businesses to send their money and their jobs to other countries from whom we will import those things.
Hello, LJ,
back
what's
to Canada.
up?
Let me give you a very simple example of this. Suntech Tomatoes in Manotick, in south of Ottawa, they grow tomatoes, as the name would suggest. They have greenhouses, and Trudeau charges the carbon tax on the CO2 they release into the greenhouse, even though that CO2 is absorbed by the plant life. Apparently, he missed that day in science class. It doesn't even go into the atmosphere. So the consequence of this is the government sends a price signal to Manotick customers to buy Mexican tomatoes, which have to be shipped right across North America, burning fossil fuels on trucks and trains.
There is a wave coming,
So
LG.
the
I think
consumer
that's
buys
maybe
the more
what you
polluting
mean.
foreign tomato at the disadvantage
blue
of the
wave.
greener and cleaner Canadian tomato. We are sending our jobs and our money to other more polluting countries in the process. In fact, the solution to fight climate change is to do precisely the opposite, to bring it home to our clean and our environmentally responsible industries in this country. Let me give you an example of how we can do that. Natural gas. We have 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas beneath our feet. We have clean hydroelectricity, cold weather, which allows us to liquefy it with 25% less energy
Hello, Peggy, how are you?
than is used in the United States of America, because after all, converting gas into a liquid is a process of cooling it down. And what do we have in Canada? Our most abundant natural resource is cold weather. That you don't know anything about that in British Columbia, so no complaining for many of you. But you have no idea how cold it gets in Ottawa. In fact, last winter it was so cold, Justin Trudeau was seen with his hands in his own pockets.
Yeah. I have heard that joke before, though. It's true, though. That's where humor
think about the
lies,
incredible opportunity we have here. So, you know, we have LNG Canada, approved by the previous Harper Conservative government, with the wise counsel of the great ministers Ed Fast, Carrie Lynn Finlay, and James Moore, who all championed the project for British Columbia. It came as a result of Ellis Ross, who was the chief of the HESLA at the time, and a future Conservative member of Parliament for Northern British Columbia. $40 billion, the biggest project in Canadian history of any kind, public or private. It will reduce millions of tons of greenhouse gases because it will be the lowest emitting facility in the world, and it will displace megawatts generated by coal in Asia. Now, this is the solution to reducing greenhouse gases. The biggest reduction in North America in greenhouse gases happened not because of a carbon tax in Canada, but because of the massive conversion of electrical facilities in the United States from coal to natural gas due to the fracking revolution. In the United States, the U.S. shifted from coal to gas. U.S. electricity produced 2,544 million metric tons in 2005. That reduced down to 1,724 metric tons of greenhouse gases.
I always forget about the lights too,
32% reduction
every time
in the amount of GHGs coming from the American electrical grid as a direct result of shifting from coal to natural gas.
What's that mean?
National Bank points out that if we were able to sell our natural gas to India, and we were able to replace their plan to double coal-fired electricity and instead use natural gas, it would reduce emissions so much that it would be the equivalent savings of 4 years of the total emissions of the entire Canadian economy. So get this straight. Of all the emissions we produce in 1 year, we could do 4 times those reductions by simply helping India expand its electrical generation using gas instead of coal. We have the 5th biggest supply of gas anywhere on Earth. We have the shortest shipping distance to both Asia and Europe. And we have the clean hydroelectricity in BC, Newfoundland, and Quebec with which to liquefy and compress that gas.
Hello, Kirk.
We have the Germans who asked us to send them our natural gas. So did the Japanese. Trudeau told them there was no business case. Well, nobody told the Americans there was no business case. They built 7 liquefaction facilities in the last 8 years. Nobody told the Qataris. They've doubled their production and just signed a 3.5 million metric ton deal with the French. Nobody told the Germans. They just built an import terminal from concept to completion in 194 days, during which time we have not completed a single solitary export plant. My common sense plan will repeal C-69 and grant rapid permits to environmentally friendly and strategically important projects like LNG facilities. We will cool that gas to minus 161 degrees Celsius, ship it off to Asia to shut down dirty Asian coal-fired plants, and send it off to Europe to turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Bring it home. And we will speed up mining. We will speed up mining. Right now, it takes 18 years to get a mine approved in Canada. 40% longer in Canada than in the United States of America.
For some
2
people,
years longer than the average of major mining countries. That's why we do not produce any of the lithium that goes in the electric car batteries that you see in Teslas and other cars driving around our streets. We have the 5th biggest supply of lithium on Earth, and we only have one operational mine, which, by the way, Trudeau sold to China, so that they can take our mineral and upgrade it and send it back to us after they've burnt a lot of coal to do it. Somehow this is supposed to be good for our environment.
Doesn't make any sense,
We should be the fastest place to grant responsible mining permits so that we can harvest these resources here in this country. And that's what we will do in order to allow for electrification. It is by green-lighting green projects like that. We should also speed up the approval of nuclear power. Clean, green, emissions-free, small modular nuclear reactors and can-do production will allow us to have solid, emissions-free baseload production. It is through this energy abundance that we can bring down costs and emissions at the same time. But it will only happen if we repeal the insane anti-development laws that we have right now. Thank you. But let me be very clear with you. It will not be a free ride for the resource corporations who have proposed these projects and then sat back and done nothing to convince people of their benefits. They are going to have to stand up and fight. Because frankly, when I meet with resource companies in Ottawa, they come to Ottawa, and all they do is suck up to the Liberal government. They have no backbone.
Everyone sucks up
and
to
no
the Liberals.
courage.
I don't understand.
And they don't fight for their workers. I want to see corporate leaders actually fighting for their workers and fighting for the paychecks instead of sucking up to the very people who are blocking these jobs and destroying our working class. You know, I'll give you an example of this. There's another tax hike coming. All the taxes that are going up on April 1st, it's enough to drive a man to drink. But they're taxing that too. There's a beer tax going up on April 1st. So
like quite a bit,
the Association of Beer Producers is running an ad. And they say in the ad that Ottawa is raising beer taxes. And so I asked one of the CEOs, I said, who is Ottawa? I've never met him. What does he look like? Handsome guy, tall, fluffy hair, baby blue eyes? Like, who is Ottawa?
It's pretty funny.
Why is the ad saying Ottawa is raising beer taxes? Ottawa's not raising beer taxes. Justin Trudeau and the NDP are raising beer taxes. And I know a lot of corporate leaders don't want to say things like that because they want to get along with everybody. But sucking up to the people who are doing the damage has only got us into this mess in the first place. So it's time for the business leadership to speak the truth.
What's up, man? How are you?
And stop sucking up to the people who are doing the damage to our country. Because I can tell you the workers on the ground and the customers who are paying the bills, they're ready for their leaders to champion them at all levels, and that is what we will expect. And we will expect the same in housing. My second major priority is to build the homes. After 8 years of Trudeau, housing costs have doubled. Rent has doubled, mortgage payments have doubled, down payments have all doubled. It has been double trouble. Let's look at how insane it is in Canada today.
It is insane.
Right now, housing costs are 25 to 45% more expensive than south of the border, even though the Americans have 8 times the population and a smaller landmass to live on.
Hey,
so
Randy,
they have
what's up, man?
less natural supply and 8 times the natural demand, and yet their prices are far more affordable. You can buy a home for less than half the price on the American side of Niagara Falls than on the Canadian side, even though they are only 15 minutes apart. Vancouver is now the 3rd most expensive housing market in the world, comparing median income to median housing prices. UBS found in 2022
Hey, Trevor,
Toronto
what's
was
up,
the
brother?
worst housing
How are you?
bubble on planet Earth, both of them more expensive than New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, London, England, and even Singapore. An island with 2,000 times more people per square kilometer than Canadians. We have the most mortgage debt by far of any G7 country as a share of our GDP. What is most astounding about this is that we actually spend far more on residential investment than any other country in the OECD. Residential investment in Canada is 9% of our economy. The OECD average is 4%. In other words, as a relative share of our economy, we are spending twice as much as the rest of our competitor countries to build fewer homes. We have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have by far the most land and we spend by far the most money building homes. How is this possible? How is this possible? We have more land, labor, and lumber than anyone, and yet we can't build homes. Well, the answer is government is standing in the way. What is the #1 cost to building a new home in Vancouver today? Land? Labor?
I think
lumber?
he's going to say, like, there's $1 million that go
Permits.
into, like, permits.
Government represents 60% of the cost of a newly built home in Vancouver today.
It's crazy,
60%. Right? So the 40% is what you use to pay for the worker, for all the lumber and the drywall and the land. This is insane. Now, we've had wonderful collaboration between all levels of government on housing. I want to say it's been very beautiful to see how well they've collaborated. There have been beautiful press conferences. They've patted each other on the backs. They've congratulated each other for the amazing job they're doing. And guess what? They're spending more money on housing than ever before. This, we're told, is an achievement. We should not worry about the cost to the person buying the home. We should celebrate that it's even more costly to pay for the programs that created the mess in the first place.
Hey, Don, what's up?
Well, I think that we've been
Mr.
too
Boulay,
polite for too
Hong
long
Kong?
with the politicians who caused this mess. My common sense plan is to use the federal spending power in order to get the local bureaucracies that block housing construction out of the way. So what I will do, what I will intend to do is link the federal dollars that cities get for housing to the number of homes that they actually allow to be built. So we will require municipalities permit 15% more home building per year as a condition of getting their federal money. If they beat the target, they'll get a bonus. If they miss the target, they will pay a penalty. And it will be strictly proportional. So if they beat the target by 10%, they'll get 10% more money. If they miss the target by 10%, they'll get 10% less money. In other words, we'll pay them like realtors and builders. Realtors are paid for the number of homes they sell, builders for the number they build. We should pay municipal governments for the number of homes they allow to be completed. That way, the bureaucracies will have an incentive to speed up and lower the cost of home building. I will also, for future transit projects, I will be putting the money from the federal government in a trust. The city will have to get bridge financing to build the transit station. And the money will only be released to them when all of the available land around the station is surrounded by high-density apartment complexes that are occupied by people. I'm not going to be building new transit stations with federal money so that we can have parking lots and brown fields with tumbleweed all around them. In Hong Kong, they have the only profitable transit system in the world. Why? They sell the air rights right over the station. So the developer actually pays the cost, happily pays the cost of the transit station for the privilege of having 100 stories above it so that people can get on the elevator, go to the bottom, jump on the train, leave late and arrive early to their destination. But here in Canada, we have I've gone to them, there's even in Vancouver, enormous parking lots and empty spaces around stations. In Winnipeg, the local councillor has been sued because he blocked 2,000 homes right next to a transit station which was built for those homes. And yet the federal government coughs up the money. I was just at a big parking lot in Pointe Claire, Quebec, right next to a station that was supposed to take future students to McGill University, but the local mayor said his constituents want to keep the parking lot. They don't want to have apartments there. So there's a big empty parking lot for a shopping center that is in low demand, right next to a multi-million-dollar train station that was supposed to take young people to McGill University. I would say to Point Claire or Winnipeg, you're not getting the federal money until you get the permits and there are apartments built right on site. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. And if you have any doubt that this can be done, if you have any doubt that when you remove government, you can get things built, look what the Squamish have done right here in Vancouver. They're building 6,000 homes on 10 acres of land. Why? Because they don't have to go through City Hall. They're on a reserve, right? Imagine if our cities ran like the Squamish people run their communities. Imagine if Calgary was run the way Susina is. Susina is far more business friendly, far faster to approve projects than the bureaucrats at Calgary City Hall. Same is true here in Vancouver. The First Nations are going to be leading the way as the most enterprising communities in this country when I'm Prime Minister, and I will ensure that they are richly rewarded for their entrepreneurial talents. And this is one example, just one example, of how much we can build when we get government out of the way and say yes to positive development for our people. And it's necessary for our economy because, as I mentioned, we're spending 9% of GDP on residential investment, twice the OECD average, in order to build fewer homes. What that has corresponded with is a massive drop in business investment. So what is happening is that as Canadians have to spend more on artificially inflated costs for real estate,
Rock, how are you?
They've had less to spend on productive business investment in patents and mines and factories and other income-generating assets. So business investment today is lower than it was in 2014, in part because real estate costs are literally sucking up all of the savings. Over time, economists will tell you savings and investment equal each other. The question is, where does your savings go as a country? Ours has to be sucked up by real estate because it's artificially expensive. So instead of making that extra RRSP contribution, which then gets invested in a business, that family has to spend the money on an artificially inflated mortgage payment. Well, imagine if we made housing affordable, they could then put that money into investing or maybe saving up to start a future business that would increase the productivity of our country. We need to increase productive investment in our country. Today, the Canadian worker gets 53 cents of investment for every dollar in the U.S. Think about that. 53 cents on the dollar. We wonder why American wages are outstripping Canadian wages so massively.
It really is confusing.
You've got two workers.
I see that in the comments right now. People are
$1
asking,
of investment
how does this make
for
sense?
every 53% his competitors gave. The 53% worker is going to be falling behind in tools and technology year after year. And it's not just the Americans. We get only 62 cents of business investment for every OECD worker. So that investment is lacking, and our workers, despite the fact that they are the best in the world, are losing out and losing wages, and no wonder they can't pay their bills. We're going to unlock the power of the free enterprise system, make Canada the fastest place in the OECD to get a permit,
hey,
lower
Flips,
taxes,
what's up, buddy? How are
reform
you?
the tax system to bring home more production to this country and productive investment that will mean more powerful paychecks for our people. But to do that, we need to fix the budget. Today, we see interest rates at 5%, which in relative to recent time is very high. 2 full percentage points are directly attributable to government deficits, according to the Scotiabank and its recent study. A group of Canadian economists recently calculated that the only way to bring down interest rates is to bring down deficits that are driving them up. Deficits, by necessity, put upward pressure on interest rates because they create more demand without creating an equivalent supply. That demand then pushes up inflation, which forces the Bank of Canada to push back down in the opposite direction. Our politicians, our central bankers, and our financial system has debauched our currency under Justin Trudeau. We've created, our money supply. this is coins, bills, and bank deposits, or M2, has gone from $1.8 trillion to $2.4 trillion in the last 3 years. That's a 32% increase in the amount of cash in our economy, during which time our economy grew by 4%. In other words, the money is growing 8 times faster than the stuff that money buys. That doesn't make us richer. Money is just an accounting system. It's the technology by which we transfer value over space and time. It isn't the value in and of itself. You know, if you have an economy with 10 apples and $10, it's $1 an apple. You double the number of dollars in the economy to 20, but you still only have 10 apples. You're not twice as rich. You just pay twice as much for the
Mike,
apple.
how are you?
And that's why we have the inflation we have today. And all of that money supply growth has been because of government deficits, excessive government spending. The cost of government is over 70% more than it was just 8 years ago. And most of that has been funded by borrowing and therefore printing and growing the money supply. As the John Manley, the great Canadian finance minister, a Liberal. God, you wouldn't have expected, James, that I would be praising a Liberal on this stage, would you? But he was back from the common sense era of Liberals, right? There used to be a common sense consensus between Liberals and Conservatives on these matters. He said what's happening today is that Justin Trudeau's government is pressing on the gas pedal of inflation while the Bank of Canada is forced to press on the brakes. So here you have the vision of a federal government sitting in the parking lot simultaneously slamming both its feet down, one on the gas, one on the brakes, and the engine is about to blow or the brakes are about to come undone. That is the economic contradiction we have. So our common sense plan as Conservatives is to bring in a dollar-for-dollar law that will require my ministers find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. We will get rid of the $35 billion infrastructure bank that hasn't completed a single solitary infrastructure project. We'll get rid of the so-called Green Fund, $1 billion, $150 million of which has already been misappropriated. We'll get rid of the Arrive scam app and cut back on the astonishing $21 billion that we're spending now on outside consultants. That's $1,400 for every family in Canada, a 100% increase in 8 years, paying these consultants often to do things they admit they don't even do. You know, 76% of the contractors on the ArriveCan app did no work. The biggest contractor is an IT consultant that admits they don't do IT.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
They have 4 employees headquartered in the basement of a cottage, and they've had $250 million of contracts. Nobody knows what they do, but they've shoveled $250 million into their pockets. I will be cutting back on the $21 billion we spend on outside consultants. I will thank you. And I will cut back on the foreign aid we're giving to dictators, terrorists, and multinational bureaucracies, and we will be bringing home that money to rebuild our military here in Canada. That's how we will project power and force in the world. By balancing the budget, we will reestablish our finances, and those finances are the #1 guarantor of the social safety net that we need as Canadians. We will restore sound money. The Bank of Canada will once again have a mandate to keep inflation low rather than creating cash through scams like quantitative easing. They will instead get back to the core job that the great Brian Mulroney gave them when he mandated the low inflation target of 2%, a mandate that we honored for 3 decades, a mandate that we will restore as the sacred promise to our workers that their paychecks and their dollars will retain their purchasing value. That is the basis of all economic soundness, is to have good money, quality, reliable money that keeps its promise to the people who earn it. And speaking of keeping promises, we had a promise in this country that if you followed the law, you could live a safe, peaceful life. That promise, too, is broken after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. His catch-and-release laws, Bill C-75, for example, allows the same repeat violent offenders to be released within hours of their arrest. The Vancouver police had to arrest or charge the same 40 offenders 6,000 times in 1 year. 6,000 arrests for 40 offenders. That's 150 arrests per offender.
Makes no sense.
Per year. The good news is we don't have a lot of criminals. The bad news is they're very productive.
A lot of people go by in the
The further good news is the solution is so obvious.
But
keep them in jail.
Rick, what's up? I'm pretty sure Rick's new.
We all understand if a young person makes a mistake, they should be rehabilitated and given a second chance, of course. But we're not talking about that here. We're talking about the career criminals who literally commit as many crimes as their waking hours will allow them to do.
You don't need to be worried about being
police
polite
have this saying
here,
now. I know it's not
it's
very
okay. We
polite
get
to
it.
say.
We're frustrated.
They call it FIDO.
Times are tough.
When they see a crime in
For a
progress,
reason.
they say, forget it, drive on. It's actually not forget it, it's something else. But they just drive on. And they tell me why. Because they know that if they arrest the guy, he'll be back out on the streets in a couple of hours. So the risk to their physical safety is not worth taking them off that criminal off the street for 45 minutes. So they just drive on. We have police officers who will tell you that they're not even done the paperwork on the arrest and the offender is back out on the street, reoffending. Even when they're convicted under Liberal legislation backed by the NDP, they get house arrest. So a career car thief can sit at home and watch Netflix or play Grand Theft Auto while he's actually doing his sentence. And then we got the news that both Paul Bernardo and Luca Magnotta are now in so-called medium security penitentiaries. This is a place where there are hockey rinks and tennis courts and human interaction. They can cook for themselves and live in relative freedom within the walls of that facility. These murderers released into medium security by Bill C-83. Now, we were told that by all the experts that these policies were so enlightened that they would lead to less crime, that locking up criminals was a good bumper sticker, but in practice it didn't work. Well, the facts are in. The debate is over. Under the previous common-sense Conservative government, we brought in tougher penalties for the repeat violent offenders, and violent crime went down by 25%. You know what else went down? Incarceration. We actually had fewer people in jail. Why? We targeted the worst offenders, and we scared the hell out of the rest of them, so they didn't offend. And it worked. We had safe streets and less crime, and now we have precisely the opposite. So a common-sense Conservative government will make it so that repeat violent offenders are no longer eligible for immediate bail. It will be jail and not bail. It will be the full sentences, not early parole. It will be mandatory prison time for the repeat offenders, and we are going to inspect the goods that come in and go out of our ports. Right now, we only inspect 1% of the shipping containers that come in and go out at our ports. No wonder the illegal drugs and guns can get in so easily, and the stolen cars can get out so easily. The Port of Montreal has 5 CBSA inspectors for 500,000 containers.
Pretty fun.
They have only 6 parking lots for stolen cars that they interrupt. So once they filled those 6 parking lots, they just let all of the other shipping containers, including those they suspect having stolen merchandise in them, go out of the country. That's how insane it is right now. Meanwhile, we're expected to spend something like $2 to $5 billion buying back the firearms of licensed, law-abiding, trained, and tested firearms owners, people who've been vetted by the RCMP and are statistically proven to be the least likely to commit an offense with a gun. We're going to send police officers to their homes and confiscate their lawfully acquired property. We're going to force widows to hand over family heirlooms that they got from their great-grandfather, instead of going after the ports that are the sieve in the system. My common sense plan will bring scanners to our 4 biggest ports. So every single shipping container that comes in and goes out will be scanned. We'll take money from back office bureaucracy and high-priced consultants and put it into frontline resources to secure our ports and stop the illegal transit of goods.
Thank you, Dr. I don't find charismatic.
We'll bring in
I
tougher
find
jail time for
I'm just
extortions,
the
for auto
host.
thefts.
Like the guy
we will
that has the house.
reinstate mandatory
I know how to do a
minimums
little bit of
for the most
broadcasting.
heinous
I'm
offenses.
not good.
And we will end the carnage of
gathered a
drugs
cool
in our
group
streets.
together
We were
that
told
like to
that
watch the
decriminalizing crack, heroin,
not to
cocaine,
interrupt.
and other hard drugs was proven by all the experts to work. And then if we added to that taxpayer-subsidized opioids, which they called, ironically, a safe supply, that somehow this was going to protect addicts from overdoses. What has happened? The data's in, the debate is over. We've had 40,000 overdose
What's up, Dan?
deaths
How are
in the
you?
last 8 years, a 200% increase. And where these policies have been tried most
Keister one,
enthusiastically,
what's up?
the results have
Welcome to
been
the channel, man.
the most horrifying.
woman,
BC
or
is ground
person,
zero
whatever.
because not only does
Welcome to
Justin
the channel.
Trudeau's policies apply here, but David Eby and the NDP policies have applied here as well. And that is why what they did is they took a walk down the downtown east side 10 years ago, and they said, why don't we try this everywhere? And they expanded the model nationwide. And the irony is, how did the opioid crisis start in the first place? A bunch of corrupt pharmaceutical companies lied to the medical system so that they could push OxyContin on desperate working-class people who were out of luck, out of a job, and out of hope.
OxyContin? Have you ever had
And they
that
caused a
prescribed to
crisis
you?
on which they made billions. They
I
knew
did, like,
exactly what they were
I don't
doing.
know, 11
Documents
years
prove
ago
they were
for
literally
bad
paying
shoulders?
bonuses to the distributors for each overdose they caused.
It's
They
a mess.
wanted to supercharge sales.
That
That's
is
how it
not
started.
a good situation.
Pharmaceutical-grade opioids. And now,
Hi, Charlotte.
what is the
How are
so-called
you?
safe supply? Pharmaceutical-grade opioids, profiting the same companies to give out the same drugs that caused the crisis in the first place. And just yesterday, the RCMP confirmed that thousands of these pills have made their way into the hands of organized crime. So your tax dollars are paying for organized criminals to get their hands on the same pharmaceutical drugs that caused the crisis in the first place. This is insanity. I will put an end to it. We will stop funding drugs and start funding treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. You know, I'm a little bit passionate about this subject, all of these subjects, as you can tell, but it's not out of any sense of malice, even towards Trudeau or the NDP. It's out of a sense of desperate disappointment. This is the country I grew up in. This is the country I love. I was born to a 16-year-old mom. She put me up for adoption to a couple of school teachers. And they taught me that in this country, it didn't matter where you came from. It mattered where you were going. It didn't matter who you knew. It mattered what you could do. That's the country my wife came to as a refugee from Venezuela. Her and 6 family members crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment in working-class Montreal. Her father, having been a banker in Latin America, would get up in the morning and jump on the back of a pickup truck and pick fruit so that he could feed his family. Well, now he has his own business. Her brother is a soldier, her other brother a carpenter, her sister's a nurse. She's my wife and hopefully the future First Lady of this country. It's the country that brought a man I met in Toronto yesterday, named Sash. He was left homeless and helpless as a small child when his parents abandoned him in South India. Couldn't speak any English. Of course, he was adopted by a Canadian family who brought him here, and now he's the top-ranked chef in all of Toronto. A movie's being released about him next month. It's the country where you can do anything, where 300,000, 500,000 people sacrifice everything to come and start over again. That's the Canadian dream. This is the country we love. It's not the country we see when we look around us today, but it's the country that we're going to restore. A country where hard work pays off, where people feel safe in their neighborhoods. And as bad as things are right now, when we look around us today, it's easy to forget how good they were and how much better they can be. So let me briefly paint the picture of the country that we will restore. It's the picture of children safely skipping off to school, their parents not worried about their safety, of seniors waving to shopkeepers as they drive home with affordable groceries in their trunk
Hey, Bob,
and change
what's
in
up?
their
How are you,
pockets.
sir? What's
Perhaps
up, Bob?
passing a cenotaph where local Legionnaires plant fresh flowers in honor of the community's heroes. It's a community where at 8 o'clock, sure as ever been the case, the sound of kids playing street hockey and parents yelling that it's time for bed, kids yelling back they just need 10 more minutes, and then finally the quiet.
Hey, Nature,
and the
what's
calm
up?
as a young couple sits on their front porch of their brand new home with a Canadian flag hanging from that porch, admiring their paycheck and looking into each other's eyes in a way that can only mean we did it.
Instigating
promise has been
Insulator,
kept.
what's up?
It
Double
was
I.
worth all the sacrifice because finally we're home. Thank you.
All right, so that one's finished. And now what are we going to watch? Because I've been asking what people want to see, and then Flip suggested there was a video out there about a deer that got eaten by a great white shark, and I tried to find that, and I couldn't, but I did find this other video, and we're going to try to show that now. Oh, what a mess, guys. What a mess. Here we go. Come on. No, okay, well, that's not going to work. So, whoops. How do we pull it back and get back on track? This is the thing. We are trying something different today, and we are going to have more interesting videos, but I find it just confusing using two computers and two mice that are like this far apart. That's a challenge. Here, this is what we're going to watch. I saw this earlier today, and it's not like watching Poilievre, which is enjoyable, but we do have to watch Trudeau because, well, if you don't get fed up enough, you'll forget to vote. And if you watch Trudeau, he will frustrate you enough that you'll remember to vote. So just give me a moment to get it caught up to where we want it to be. Here we go.
Thank you all for being here today. I would especially like to welcome Prime Minister
we
Trudeau,
get Chrystia
Minister
Freeland in this one,
Freeland, and
and
Minister Ehren,
It's kind of brutal.
all
but
who have been long-standing supporters,
the situations
allies,
that we
and
face,
advocates
guys.
of Women's College Hospital. Women's College Hospital was founded 140 years ago as one of the only places for women to practice medicine and
look at little
receive care.
Freeland just nodding her head. She's
Today,
so happy.
our rich history of health equity remains at our core. It is the driving force of the programs we create, the care we are proud to offer to our diverse communities, and the culture of inclusivity that we deeply believe in. Over 50 years ago, Women's was the first hospital to establish a walk-in birth control clinic, known today as the Bay Centre. Not only did the Bay Centre provide contraception and reproductive health care, it also centered itself as a teaching clinic for physicians, nurses, social workers, and pharmacists. And while our programs and services at the Bay Centre have evolved in the last 50 years, at its core, it remains a safe haven for women to access the care they need and is staffed by a team who all believe, like we do, that access to reproductive health care is everyone's right.
Hello, Yvonne. What's up?
Today's announcement is a monumental moment in the evolution of our healthcare system that has not been reimagined in this way since the inception of universal health care. We are honored that the Prime Minister and his colleagues chose Women's College Hospital timed with International Women's Day, to share this news and what it means for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And now it's my pleasure to welcome the Honourable Marcy Ehren, Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth.
Thank you so much, Heather. Hello everyone, bonjour à tout le monde. Merci Heather pour cette merveilleuse introduction. It is so fitting to be here at Women's College Hospital with our Prime Minister, with our Deputy Prime Minister, to speak about just how game-changing this national pharmacare plan will be for women in this country. Fitting because Women's College is a place that breaks ground, new ground, and has done so, as Heather mentioned, for decades upon decades. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our former colleague, it's now colleague and friend, Carolyn Bennett, who broke a lot of ground here with the teams here, who is a legend here, and who shared with me stories of that time. So proud to be on this hallowed ground. It was just a week ago that I stood alongside Minister Mark Holland to announce Canada's first national pharmacare plan, a plan that will cover diabetes medication for almost 4 million Canadians and make contraception free for women right across this country. Here's what I need to tell you. Since last week, there has been an outpouring of support from women right across this country, every corner of it, different backgrounds. I am talking activists, I am talking medical professionals, young women, experts, all saying that this was the right thing to do, all saying that this is something that they had been waiting for. In the words of Kelsey MacDonald, and Kelsey is at the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada, she says, this is truly historic for Canadian women.
Hey James, what's
During
up?
the
How are you?
30-plus childbearing years of a woman's life, they're spending money out of pocket on contraception. Your income should never be a barrier to accessing tools that help control your own future. We absolutely agree with Kelsey, which is exactly why full contraceptive coverage for every Canadian woman is part of the very first phase of the pharmacare plan.
Am I losing everybody?
We did this because we know
like,
how many lives will change.
I don't want to lose everybody.
We did this
'cause we
because
can
we
put
know
out
how many
another
women
video.
today
We've got
and in the
options,
future
guys.
will benefit from this.
But I asked
we did this
many
because it
times,
isn't right that people
what
have to
people
make
wanna
decisions
watch.
about which contraception
well,
to
besides
use
the
based on the
shark
price
video,
and not
didn't get
based
any
on what
suggestions.
works for them and what's right for them.
There is
So
no video
with International
available yet
Women's
of a
Day
deer being
tomorrow,
eaten by a shark off Nova
let's
Scotia,
celebrate
but
the incredible women in our lives, the incredible women that were groundbreakers and
Jonez, what's
continue
up?
to be in this facility. But let's not forget the generations of feminist activists that dreamed of days like today. Merci beaucoup. It is now my absolute pleasure to pass the mic to the Deputy
worse,
Prime Minister,
guys.
Finance Minister, and
Somebody's
proud
gotta let me
MP
know
of
what they
University
wanna
Rosedale,
watch.
my
I don't
friend,
want to watch
Christian
the
Freeland.
Olympics either. Like,
Well,
What a hug.
thank
They're
you very
hugging?
much, Marcy.
they spent the whole morning together.
I'm so
Like,
delighted to be here with Marcy, with the Prime Minister, with Heather, with the amazing team here at Women's College Hospital. The work
It's a weird thing
you
because I
do
like
here
watching them because I
is
don't
so
like them.
important.
Like,
And I just want to
me.
start by recognizing that, thanking all the healthcare professionals across Canada, and just a personal thank you to the amazing people here at Women's College Hospital. This is really a special personal place for me. Because I gave birth to my first child at Women's College Hospital.
An
And,
alien
you know,
baby.
like so many
Like
women
Karina Gould
in
just
Toronto,
had.
in
An
Ontario,
alien baby.
that means whenever I come here, I think of that moment when I became a mother here with the help of all of you. And so I just really want to recognize the role Women's College Hospital plays, all our healthcare workers play. They are at the center of so many of the stories that are the most precious stories in the lives of Canadians. And of course, the work you do here is quite literally life-saving. Women's College is where the simplified Pap test was developed, leading to more
Hey,
women
Patricia, how are you?
getting
What's
screened
up?
for early signs of cervical cancer. It was the first hospital in Ontario to use mammography to detect breast cancer, literally saving lives every single day here. And Ontario's first sexual assault and
Tinfoil
domestic
hat,
violence
what's up,
care
man?
center was opened here. Alors, vous êtes de
We're not listening to her in
véritables
French. I know that.
Really are pioneers shown policy.
here.
Jump into
Age
next.
women's not. Finance Minister, I want to say to you,
We're
it
not
is
listening to her
also
in
an
French.
excellent economic policy,
weather guy, what's up?
which is adding to Canada's labor force, helping our economy to grow. Tomorrow is International Women's Day. And so just before I close, I'd like to pay tribute for a moment to Canada's pioneering
And to my
feminists.
cauldron, because
To
I'm
Judy
a witch.
Lamarche, Laura Sabia et Monique Bégin, qui ont convaincu le gouvernement d'établir
Convinced the government of a time to set
bad
up
joke,
the
right,
situation
Royal
Not funny.
Commission of Inquiry on women in 1867.
Morna Ballantyne, Martha Friendly, and Gordon Cleveland. They spent decades fighting for a universal national system of early learning and childcare, and their work, as well as the pioneering work of Quebec feminists, was what made it possible for our government to take the leap and establish a national system of early learning and childcare. I want to pay tribute to Emily Stowe, the first female physician in Canada and the founder of Women's College Hospital. What an amazing woman. And to her supporters who started the transformative work of this hospital 140 years ago. And to all of our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, whether they're alive or not, whose courage and confidence
She's
inspire us
cracking up.
every single day. I want to say to them, to our foremothers, thank you very
know
much.
about her grandparents?
We stand on
Grandfather, at
your
least?
shoulders. Merci encore à l'incroyable.
Thank you once again to the incredible team from Women's College Hospital, Carolyn Bennett, who worked tirelessly for women
I don't
across.
have anything good on Palestine flips. Whoops. What is happening? I believe. Oh no.